Baker and Phil Salter. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki. Shall we go over here to the bar? There we go. Well, Phil, thank you very much for being here today.
Pleasure.
I thought we might start by you perhaps introducing Salmat. It's an iconic Australian company. It was founded in the 70s, right? Listed in 2002.
Yep.
But I know that there'll be a bunch of people in the audience who might not be so familiar with Salmat. Could you tell us a little bit about how it was and what it is now?
Sure. First of all, thanks for inviting me to come this
Pleasure.
afternoon. And I walked into this auditorium about 2 hours ago, and I've heard the F-bomb get dropped a few times. So I thought to myself, what the fuck am I doing here? I suppose where I'm a little different is Salmat was first of all founded by myself and a guy called Pete Matic. We were very creative. Salter, Matic. That's where Salmat came from.
Not the other way around?
No, not the other way around, no. Pete argued on that one, but
Right.
I won.
You won, good.
He reckons he would have made more money had we gone Matsal, but anyhow.
Right.
So the business has been around for 35 years. It's been through all of the ups and downs that I'm sure if you haven't experienced yet, you will. We started off as a letterbox distribution company. So we try to get ourselves categorised as a media company. These days, you try and get yourself categorised not as a media company, but which we're currently in the process of doing. But the business grew dramatically over from 1979. We first formed the business, and we had a little tiny warehouse in a place called Regent's Park in Sydney. It was about 400 square metres. At its peak, before we sold one of our divisions 2 years ago, almost to the day, we were occupying about 150,000 square metres of space in 5 countries in 54 sites. We'd achieved a revenue from zero in 1979 to nearly, when we floated, it was a couple of $100 million, and through organic and acquisition sales, we grew that business to nearly $1 billion in revenues and about 10% EBITDA. So the business has been through a lot of in that time. I mean, I've heard people talk about making mistakes.
Yeah.
And we've made plenty.
A few of them?
Oh yeah. I mean, we had a product offering called Tumbleweed, which we thought was a great idea, but no one else did.
Yeah. Well, the name was a start, right?
Yeah, it's actually a desert
Kind of,
weed.
yeah,
Tumbleweeds
yeah,
are a desert weed, and I wish we had kept it in the bloody desert. But it was a business that had secure email.
Yep.
Well, the perception becomes reality in business, and in that business, everybody thought that emails were already secure. So all this infrastructure we put together didn't work. And as a private company, before we floated, back in probably the late 80s, when we were making a lot of money, but it was still, it was a private company. Two people owned it, and we lost $13 million.
Yep.
So that was a bit of a bad mistake.
Yeah.
But what you've got to do is get out of it.
Yeah.
Don't blame anybody for it, because the decision was made by both Peter and myself to do this, and get on with life.
Yeah. I often say to founders that as soon as you have that gut feel, it might be about a person or a part of the business that it's not working out,
Sure.
It's probably too late already.
Yeah.
Like you should be acting instantly on that. Whereas people tend to wait 6 months. Is that your experience?
Absolutely.
In
I mean, particularly when companies get larger and you've got a board and you've got more infrastructure, we have all those things now. Yeah. Whereas back in the day, Pete and I would be in one of our cars and we'd have a board meeting, and we'd decide to purchase something without a feasibility, but we knew it was the right decision to do. Yeah. I mean, that BPO division that we we sold 2 years ago for nearly $400 million. That business was created out of Salmat becoming the absolute dominant player in creating mail for Australia Post. We used to lodge 65% of Australia Post mail. And we realised that that business was going nowhere because it was still extremely profitable, obviously for the money we got for it, but it was a business that was diminishing in terms of mail by 3% per annum, and now that's 6%. 2 years later. So you know, that business got created out of us bringing a whole new technology. I suppose it's a pretty buzzword here today. Into the industry. You know, we introduced digital printing, quality digital printing, that wasn't cut sheet. It wasn't like a photocopier type thing. It was continuous station, like a big web press. And they were cheap, and they were fast, and they were very good quality. And we ended up doing every bank in Australia, every telco. So
this is invoices? Is it,
yeah, all
their
invoices, anything at all.
So millions of pieces of mail, what, a day?
Over a billion pieces a year. Now, and that got born out of us introducing technology into an old business. And if I look at the last few years, it's probably been the toughest 5 or 6 years the company's had. If you think that success is about reinvention, then that means that you've got to keep reinventing yourself. Reinvent yourself and reinvent what you do. And if you don't do that, I can promise you guys that you're going to be, you'll be sitting here in a year's time or 5 years' time, and you won't have made it. You won't have been the success you all want to be. I mean, I think it's extraordinary that there's so many people here. It just shows that
the community is growing.
You've hit a real nerve. I mean, people are looking at getting seed capital. They're looking at someone either buying their idea or funding their idea. And that's a great thing. And I think that's probably built Salmat over all those years.
Let's go back to the very beginning, because you were disrupting something and you were using paper to disrupt something, like many of the founders here are trying to use digital products to disrupt something. But
they're doing a damn good job too. I mean, you've you've wrecked every media company in the country. Except us. We're the last man standing.
You wrecked an industry too. Tell us about that. Okay. What was that?
Back in the 80s, we started our business, I said, in 1979. And by 1980, 81, 82, we were going really well. And the sales were going well, but we realised that all these newspapers, and you guys wouldn't know this, I mean, but there were afternoon newspapers. They were that thick. Imagine having an afternoon newspaper these days. I mean, just go to your iPad and read the news. But so we decided that anybody who was buying a half-page advertisement in one of either Fairfax or Murdoch's newspapers should have been doing catalogues. So we got Anna, who still works for the company after 35 years. She still works out west for us, to print, to cut out the half-page ads or the full-page ads, and then she'd post them in a big sort of folder. And then we'd go through it and we'd ring those companies, and we'd offer them an alternative. And over the next 10 years, we decimated newspapers. Afternoon newspapers were gone, completely gone. Afternoon newspapers were gone. Morning newspapers were diminishing, and you people have all finished them off. So, well done, we did it.
So let's talk a little bit about hiring and team and building teams. And you have built a very large team over time. Let's talk about just the first perhaps 5 or 10 hires that you made back in 1979. What were you thinking then, and what type of people were you trying to bring in?
We're actually a little bit like our friend from Spring. We tried to find people who were a bit like us. We were quite sales orientated. Pete is an accountant. So we had a good cover of finances and P&Ls and balance sheets, but we tried to find people who could build our business fast.
Yeah.
And we had a powerful team. And if I look back on the 80s and the early 90s, no one left.
Yeah.
We'd have a conference. It was like going on a rugby tour.
Yeah.
It was it was a lot of fun, a lot of backslapping, and because it was great to win.
Yeah.
And so we sort of tried to create a business that had people a bit like us.
Yeah. We were really passionate about it.
Had to be passionate. Yeah. If they didn't love it, you didn't want them there. Get rid of toxicity in a business. If you have somebody who's toxic in your environment, get rid of them, because you won't change them, and they'll change your business.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple stuff.
Yeah. And you had a co-founder, very close and long relationship now.
Yeah.
With Pete. And can you talk a little bit about how that worked? Because I know there's a lot of co-founders out there, and in fact, most businesses have co-founders.
Peter and I were school friends from age 12.
Yeah.
He came from a bit of a struggling background with a single mum. I came from a more quite a successful family in business, but my father was a mad gambler and lost our family home.
Wow.
So we were both absolutely driven.
Yeah.
To be successful, and a little bit like the previous speaker. I mean, the drive's got to come from you.
Yep.
I mean, I've not really mentored a lot of people. A guy asked me would I mentor him once, and I said, listen, mate, I've got 6 children. I'm trying to mentor them. So, yeah. But I do mentor people these days, a couple of people who I'm very fond of. I think if you look back on managing people, and I've never read a management book in my life. I've worked it all out for myself.
Yep.
And I've discussed it with other people. But I don't think you can manage more than about 8 people.
Yep.
And because managing is about 2 things, and mentoring is about 2 things. It's about you coming forth with your wisdom, but it's about you also asking that person exactly what's he thinking.
Yeah.
And I think if I look back on Salmat's life, I probably have done that with all the senior managers.
Yeah.
Actually having dinner on Monday night with the number 3 guy in Salmat. Now, I haven't worked in that company since 2009. I retired. We retired just before the company was 30 years old. But I'm still close to those guys. And they talk to me. I think they talk to me more than I talk to them.
Yeah. And did you and Pete have a sort of co-leadership role? And
absolutely,
you guys were sort of the co-CEOs, throughout the whole.
I learned a bit about profit and loss statements and balance sheets.
Yeah.
And Pete became a great salesman.
Yeah.
So between the two of us, we were always joint CEOs. At one stage, we did break it up. The BPO division, I ran, and I was the wrong person to run that. I mean, I could sell it, but I couldn't. I didn't have a clue about a production floor.
Yeah.
I couldn't even spell it. and Pete was probably more of that sort of mindset, but he stayed in the letterbox distribution business.
Yeah.
And then after about 2 years, so we're MD of each of them, and they were big. They were decent sized businesses. But then we thought, well, this isn't really. Why don't we just, because we do work so well together, just become joint CEOs? So we did.
Yeah. And
it worked well. I don't think it works well unless you're a founder.
Yeah.
Very unusual for it to work well unless you're co-founders.
Yeah.
But it did for us.
Yeah. I loved your story about cutting out the newspaper ads, sticking them in a book and starting to ring them, call them up, because that's what I think today we'd call that growth hacking, right? And growth hacking in a digital sense is all about trying to find crazy ways to get big lists of people, and then somehow, whether it be by email or all other forms of communication, sell to them in a way that's not sort of, you know,
I'll make
door
sure
knocking?
Salmat's digital division starts doing that if not already.
Yes, all right,
Yeah,
good.
okay.
So I was going to say, are you now looking at those, you know, you guys, I know you now have a big push into digital, and is that a
We've
big
got a
part
big
of
push
it?
into digital. It hasn't made us a dollar, to be honest with you. It's a business that's, for me, been difficult to get my mind around. I'm used to, you sell something for a price, you've got your margin, you've got your costs, you've got your net profit.
Yep.
That doesn't work anymore. And if you ever sell that business, it's a multiple of your profit.
Yep.
Now, it's a multiple of your turnover. And it's a clip on the way through. It's a different model.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for us, our Java programmers are domiciled now in either Sri Lanka or the Philippines.
Yep.
We've got 120 in Sri Lanka, and we've got probably the same in the Philippines. So it just means that the whole model's changed, and you've got to change with it.
Yeah.
And you're probably wearing a Ralph Lauren shirt that was probably made in China, you know, designed by an Italian Jewish Ralph Lauren in New York.
Yeah.
You know, the world's changed, and we've got to change with it. So for us, it's been an interesting journey. We try to employ, because we really like to try and employ as many people as we can and give them opportunities, and it just didn't work that way. I mean, we had a business that, well, NetStarter, we bought NetStarter, we bought half of NetStarter last year. They wouldn't have a business unless they were doing all their programming in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have one. It would be too expensive. You're paying 80 or 100 grand a year compared to $15,000 a year. So that's changed. We've had to change with it. The digital journey, I'm very excited about our digital journey going forward, but it hasn't paid any dividends to us as yet, and that reflects in the marketplace. The photon purchases that we made about 4 years ago, we spent $80 million on buying 4 of their businesses. Unfortunately, when you bought the business, you didn't buy the passion.
Yeah.
Because the people who had the passion, who started those businesses and ran them inside the Photon group, had left.
Yeah.
If they hadn't left, they were just about to leave.
Yep.
And we bought the businesses based on on their passion, not the passion of the people that were working for them. Because passion is contagious. If you're passionate, the person you're working with is going to be passionate as well. And so it didn't work for us. You know, we had a crack at it, and we're having sort of round 2 now in our digital world.
Yeah.
And we'll make it. You know, we'll be, you know, Fairfax didn't make it.
Yep.
Rupert didn't make it, except for realestate.com was a sensational business for them.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, no one's really pulled it off yet on a scale in what we do.
Yeah.
And that's our plan.
Fantastic. I want to talk to you, you know, Blackbird's a venture capital fund. You know, I imagine back in '79, there wasn't much venture capital around. Have you ever heard of that word, those two words put together?
Hadn't been invented.
How did you fund the business, particularly in the early days, and then even through the growth period? What were the core sort of funding mechanisms?
Well, you couldn't do it today.
Yeah.
Back in those days, there were these bank managers who were actually managing a business. They weren't being controlled by their credit managers.
Yep.
And I had 5 mortgages on my house.
Wow.
Yeah. You couldn't do it these days. I mean, you just couldn't do it.
No.
You know. I didn't tell my wife, actually. And we had one bank manager. I met this bloke in Fiji. I was on holidays in Fiji. We'd started Salmat, and just to go a bit before Salmat, Pete and I owned a couple of menswear stores. Don't ask how that happened, but it did. It was one of those things that...
In the 70s?
So they were quite successful. They were quite a good business.
Cream-coloured shirts?
All that, yeah. And the short sleeve...
short sleeve versions.
Yeah.
Excellent, good.
And so I had, at the time, 2 children, both a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, blonde hair, you know, walking through the Fijian hotel. And this bloke was with his wife and another couple, and he was about my father's age at the time. I'm going back to about 1981 or 82, and this bloke's having, about 10:30 in the morning, he was having a thing called a Black Marlin, which is, I think it's Bacardi, Tia Maria and Coke. And I said to him, this is a throwaway, because his wife said, "Oh, what lovely children." I said, "Yeah, not really, but..." And he said to me, I said, "Mate, you're starting a bit early, aren't you?" And he said, "Listen, mate, when you drink as much as I do, you got to start early." So straight away we became, we connected, and he said, "What do you do?" Yeah. He said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I got this business called Salmat, and we're having trouble funding it." And I told him a bit about it, and he said, "Here's my card. I'm a bank manager.
Wow.
I got plenty of money." It was the Westpac. It was CBA back in those days, not Commonwealth Bank. It was Commercial Bank of Australia, which got taken over by Westpac, and he was the manager of Parramatta, which was a big office, and it was near where our premises were. So that bloke could never happen today. You guys, you could never enjoy it. But we had a $50,000 overdraft, which is big anyhow, and we would be 400,000 overdrawn. Seriously. And he'd ring up and say, "Listen, the auditors are coming in," because there were the computers. The auditors are coming in. Can you just don't pay any walkers? Because that's why it was all paying out. We were growing so fast. It was just capital. We didn't have any capital. Yeah. And so we wouldn't pay. Peter would put the checks in the boot of his car. Yeah. Tell our half a dozen staff they'd been mailed out, and when walkers are ringing up and complaining about not being paid, they could genuinely say, "Oh no, they've gone. They're in the boot. They're in Pete's boot." And then as soon as the auditors got out, he would then ring us up and say, "Okay, they're gone. You can send those checks out." I mean, that doesn't happen these days. I mean, that guy, his name was Ted Rowe. He was a lovely bloke, and he was our manager until he had a nervous breakdown.
I'm not surprised. I'm going to ask you one more question from my side, then we'll go on to from the audience questions. And it's about being public versus being private, and something I'm very interested in, that you spent many years as a private business, and you talked about the board meetings in the car. What's it like being a public company? How careful do you have to be today about what you say? How worried are you about the share price? Like, how does it change that mentality?
Yeah. Firstly, I'm not worried about the share price because I know it'll come back.
Yeah.
I've never sold a share. I've only ever bought shares in Salmat. Pete and I still own 48% of the company.
Wow.
It's been very kind to us with dividends. Have I enjoyed public company life? For me, not particularly. I look back on it, and it was a good thing to do. At the time, we had decided that if our children didn't want to come into the business, then it might not have a future unless we float. And we were employing a couple of thousand people at the time, which is a huge responsibility to have. I mean, if you're employing a lot of people, I think under we sold BPO, and we had a very large call centre in the Philippines, a couple of thousand people there. We had about 7,500 staff at our peak. We run about 3,500 now. But public company to private company, you've got to have a good reason to do it. We did. It gave us a whole new capital base. Yep. You can borrow funds as a public company a lot easier than you can as a private company. Would I do it again? Maybe not. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's a hard one.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, let's go to a few questions here. How do you judge a good opportunity, and how do you decide when it's the right time to innovate or sell a part of your company? And I guess in a way also the buy versus build question in there as well, because I know you bought a lot of businesses.
Yeah, we have bought a lot of businesses over the years. I think a good opportunity, and I've gone both ways here. It's either you're buying the person, which is always good, or you're buying the business. Yep. It's got to have margin, but I'm old-fashioned, you know, with margin. I mean, I like profit.
Yeah.
And turnover's good, but profit's king.
Yeah.
And so I think that the business has got to have both those. It's got to have good people, and when do you divest of it? When the price is something that you think you won't achieve the next year.
Yeah. Very good answer. The next one is salesmanship the most important ingredient to your success?
I've got a little sign on my bar at home that says, "Sales is a powerhouse of profit." I think that says it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And the ability to influence people, right? I think
yeah.
A lot of time, you know, you built a product-based business. You know, people out there who are building internet-based product businesses think so much about the product, and you know, I've set it up here today. We love product-centric founders who just live and breathe and love their product.
Yeah.
But there's a whole other side to it, and that's the people, right? And you've got to be able to influence people, and you've got to be able to bring that enthusiasm around you for your product.
Salmat's got a great culture. It lost its way a little bit when Pete and I left. They've just gone through a whole process of writing it all down.
Yeah. Is that the first time we
didn't ever have to write it down. We just did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, back when we had a couple of hundred staff, I knew I could memorise all their names. As I walked into a room, I'd be able to say, "Hi, how are you, Rick?" or "How are you, Alison?" or whoever.
Yeah.
But when you've got a lot of people working for you, that can't happen. So you've got to find other ways of talking to them. Don't talk at them, talk to them.
Yeah.
Ask them a couple of questions. You know, ask them how many kids they've got, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So the culture, I think, of all the ingredients in any business, and it's been said here on at least 3 different occasions since I was watching from 2 o'clock, culture is absolutely paramount.
Yeah. Excluding the technological change, how do you think entrepreneurship has changed over the years? So you see, I'm sure you see a lot of tech founders today. How do you feel they've changed?
Entrepreneurship is I've never liked being termed an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I'm a businessman.
Yep.
Or I'm a salesman. Entrepreneur sort of conjures up for me. It used to. It's not so much now. It's used so often. A dreamer. You know, I'm dreaming of making this money.
Yeah.
You know, then you wake up and
and you're not.
you haven't made it. Yeah, it was a dream. Yeah. But look, there have been some fantastic stories here today.
Yeah.
Sensational stories. You know, ours has been a longer journey. That's the only difference. A longer journey of ups and downs, and, you know, 35 years is a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, when we started Salmat, I was 27. So,
fantastic.
Bit of water under the bridge.
So it sounds as though you'd started the men's stores before Salmat.
Yeah.
You could have chosen to go and work for someone and, you know, have a boss and have a
I've only been
9 to 5 job.
I've been self-employed since I was 24.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think drove you to do that, and why was that always your passion?
A need. A wife who was pregnant.
Yeah.
And you know, we really had to find some way of making more money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just pure need.
Yeah.
And then you got out and did it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, let's take a couple more. We've done that one. What is the typical equity structure with an investor? So I'm not quite sure what that means. If you have a good answer to that, you're welcome to answer it. Otherwise, we might jump to the next one.
No, I don't think we'll answer that one. Too hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, too hard. As an investor, do you ask the companies about? Do you invest in startups? That's a good question.
Well, I'm investing in one right now at the moment. Yeah. I've put a couple of $1 million into it.
Awesome.
It's a business that a bit like that Sri Lankan and Chinese model. I have a brother who has been a dental technician for 35 years. And he went to China 6 years ago and started getting a mate over there. Then I found out that another company in Australia just sold their business to a venture capital for 90 million.
Yeah.
And I said, well, let's put your business on steroids, mate.
Yeah.
So I got a Salmat guy, one of the really top blokes. I gave him some equity.
Yeah.
I got a professor of dentistry. I gave him some equity.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty involved in it. You know.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I've got a startup.
There you go. You got a startup. I'm
age
impressed.
62, and I've got a startup.
Awesome.
How good is that?
I love it. Well, guys, I think on that note, we're going to call it a wrap.
Yeah, yep.
Thank you very much, Phil. It's been great having you up here. Thank you for your support today and your support, ongoing support of the Aussie startup community.
And my support of Blackbird.
And your support of Blackbird, which we're very, very grateful for.
Yeah, that's
thank
great.
you.
I think you're doing great things.
Cheers.
Well done.
Thank you.